Our next story is about China. It is building up its military capabilities as it rehearses the siege of Taiwan. Simultaneously, according to a new report, military analysts saying that the Chinese Navy is trying to create a blockade on Japanese islands. A blockade to, quote-unquote, take Taiwan without a fight. What's really sparked this concern? Recent drill by China sparked speculation. It's not without merit, though. First, just have a look at this map on your screen. You see Taiwan, you see China, and you see Okinawa, Japan's main island. The distance between Okinawa's most westerly islands and Taiwan must be approximately a few hundred kilometers. That's where the Chinese are reportedly trying to create a sort of blockade. Analysts believe that a fleet of Chinese Navy ships have conducted an exercise to impose this naval blockade between Okinawa and the most westerly island of its prefecture. What was the aim? To isolate them and take control of Taiwan. Quoting multiple Japanese government sources, the Yomiuri newspaper reported on Wednesday that 6 Chinese ships, including a Jiangkai Class 1 frigate, as well as 3 Coast Guard vessels, set sail around the southern tip of Taiwan. The Chinese ships then passed the Pacific through the Miyako Strait and into the East China Sea on December 22nd. The joint operation between the Navy and the armed Coast Guard vessels was the first in the 250-kilometer strait that separates Okinawa Island and Miyako, as well as an archipelago of smaller islands. It ends with Yonaguni, which is a little over 100 kilometers to the east of Taiwan. Now, according to Japanese government analysts, the Chinese ships' movements were an unusual move that suggests a maritime blockade. And what's more, the exercises also coincided with the continued presence of Chinese Coast Guard ships in waters surrounding islands in the East China Sea. Of course, Beijing claims and refers to them as the Diaoyu Archipelago. The uninhabited territories are part of Okinawa Prefecture and are administered by Japan, which knows them as the Senkakus. Analysts believe that China's moves could be part of China's broader strategy to take Taiwan without a fight. They believe that China is using its strategic as well as asymmetric advantages in these waters. The challenge for Japan, though, is how it can counter China. Remember, Beijing sees Taiwan as part of China. They see the island as national territory, waiting to be reunited by force if necessary. The US opposes any attempt to take the self-governed island by force and has committed to supplying the island with weapons to defend itself. Now comes the question of how would a blockade on Japanese islands help it in its invasion of Taiwan? Here's what analysts are saying. Japan is limited to using its own Coast Guard units in order to deter its Chinese counterparts in the waters of southwest Japan. Why is that, you ask? It's because China would interpret the deployment of any maritime self-defense force units as an escalation, and that in turn would provide China with an excuse to deploy its own navy. And let's not forget, China's naval strength is significantly larger and more potent than Japan's maritime forces. And so a blockade in the Miyako Strait would make a Japanese response extremely complicated. And there are other possibilities for China blockading Japanese islands. For one, it would be to make it harder for the Japanese forces and its allies to come to the aid of Taiwan in the event of an emergency situation. Number two, by isolating the islands, China could essentially hold their residents hostage to deter any resistance from Japan. Number three, China wants to invade and occupy these islands. After all, some within China claiming that Japan's Okinawa should be controlled by China. Just to clarify here, China has not created a blockade on Japanese islands, at least so far. These are just exercises at the moment. But you see, these provocative actions by China do add to Japan's anxieties. Remember, China also has held joint naval patrols with Russian units. Plus, Chinese survey ships continue to map the ocean floor around Okinawa. There have also been frequent intrusions by Chinese ships into Japanese waters around the Senkakus. All this as China continues to flex its military might its weapons and military equipment development has hit exponential levels. In fact, latest reports suggesting that China is currently conducting the largest military build-up seen since that of Nazi Germany during the 1930s. All of these is to give America's defense establishment sleepless nights. To stay up to speed with the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.